There we go. It's recording and we're live.
Boom, we're live.
2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. Kind of not bad Wednesday afternoon here, but a little bit fresh, but sun's out. So we're totally happy. We're here with the amazing Friska Wirya. I've been looking forward to this one for about 2 weeks. We've sort of had conflicting timeframes, but thank you for joining us. Absolute pleasure to see you.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here.
So the way we start things off around here, we always ask people to give a quick 1-minute overview of who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm a change management consultant. So I accelerate digital transformation by increasing adoption. And that only comes from changing the mindsets and behaviors of individuals.
Beautiful. And so there's fair to say there's a little bit of change going on in the world at the moment. And I think, some of the stuff that I'm kind of interested to dig into with you and get your thoughts on, and people watching this will get a whole bunch of stuff out of it, is there's going to be some long-term changes to the way businesses and individuals work due to what we're going through. And I think sort of digging into some of that, and I know you've produced some amazing content and stuff around the things that businesses and individuals need to think of. So I think there's a whole bunch of really interesting stuff for us to unpack. But where did you want to start?
I think the challenge of longer term change, especially given the shift to remote work, I think a lot of people didn't realize how much it would impact people's mental health and their productivity, because I think there's a distinction between connectedness versus connection, and we're really yearning for that connection. So I was on the phone to a friend last week, and funnily enough, he's in risk management, but he has connections to Lifeline, and Lifeline, they have had the highest number of calls in their entire existence because of COVID, 90,000 in just 1 month alone. And the majority of that has got to do with, yes, mental health issues relating to the financial impact this has had on people's roles. I was reading another piece by the Australian Institute of Management, and so 25% of people have been stood down, and about 20% have been made redundant. And another 15 or something percent have had their earnings impacted in some shape or form.
And so from a business change to how they manage that sort of thing in the past, managing mental health was, rightly or wrongly, definitely wrongly, kind of poo-pooed a little bit. It's probably only the last few years that there's been this sort of dialogue around how we manage our own mental health. But the onus on businesses to do something about it has never really been that loud or that prevalent. Now it's a completely different story, isn't it?
Correct. I think it's only now they're realizing, the old school mentality of, whatever happens at home, you leave it at home. It doesn't happen. We bring it with us no matter where we are. So it's only now they're realizing the impact on profitability and productivity.
And leadership as well. The way that businesses lead, the way they set out their stall from who they are and what their values are, but also at an individual leadership line management level. There's going to be some changes that happen there, aren't there? What are your thoughts?
100%. So there are a lot of old school, I don't want to call them the leaders, they're really managers, where they equate value to time in the office. So TITO, time in the office. If I see you, that means you're working, that means you're doing something. Whereas now, no one's in the office. And even when you're on a call, a lot of people don't put on their videos. So you not only are not together, you actually can't see each other. So that means these managers have had to step up. They've had to go where it's uncomfortable and embrace a new way to lead. And that new way to lead is a different kind of TITO, and that is trust in the outcomes. Which I think for a lot of people, especially the baby boomers, they're not sure what this means, So I'm finding a lot of people had to be more transparent with what they're working on, what they're not working on, progress updates. They've had to use digital tools very fast, such as Padlet, Miro, Planner. So more transparency and visibility will gain that trust. And I also have a war story of my friend who's a partner in a law firm. And that particular law firm was very conservative and old school. And every morning they had to send an email to the managing partner to tell him where they were working from that day, the address and the specific area of the house. For example, living room, 10 Smith Street.
Wow.
It was incredible. Yeah.
And so coming back to your point then around baby boomers being leaders, and them changing, I think it's easy for us to potentially for people watching this to think that we're having a go at that demographic, and that's not the case at all. It's what you've grown up with, and it's what you've
Correct.
learned in how you lead and manage.
Correct.
And so the challenges for everybody, employees and managers, are there. They're just different. They're different ends of the spectrum. Managers who are perhaps having to be more engaging and engaged with people over this kind of platform without having any of the kind of non-visual cues that you always get in conversation. They're gone. So we're relying more now on really good verbal communication. Written communication needs to be great as well, because you can't just drop out by someone's desk and back up what you've just been talking about in an email. Those things. There's this sort of disconnect on that level as well.
And also, before, very rarely would you talk about your psychological, mental, emotional challenges with your manager, with your leader, whereas now that's getting more and more acceptable and it's becoming the norm. So really, psychological and emotional safety, it's a leader's role to provide that sort of environment to their team. So I don't like to call them soft skills, because they really are critical skills. Like we said, the communication, the empathy, the dependability, authenticity, they all play a role in inspiring the workforce now. And we need inspiration and motivation more than we ever had before, because a lot of people they've lost their meaning, they've lost their stability, they've lost their certainty. So what can leaders do in this day and age to slowly but surely rebuild that?
Yeah, and it's interesting that a couple of things you said there: inspiration and motivation. My take for a long time was, prior to all this, was if you're having to hire people, if you're hiring people and you have to motivate them, you've hired the wrong people. Like particularly in the tech space, the majority of people are probably coming with pretty good degrees of self-motivation. Most people want to be inspired by a vision, a mission, the direction we're going in, all these things. They want to feel like they're part of a bigger something, whether they're building a product that's going to be used for tackling social injustice or whatever it's going to be, or improving education. But people want to be inspired. I think now, though, that people probably do need motivating. The time away from each other, is getting longer and longer.
Yeah.
The days can blur into one. If you're someone who's single and you live alone, and unlike me, you don't have a fluffy cat or the head of morale to look after them, and it's just you, and you're separated from your family, that it's quite easy to underestimate how the impact of that can be on people. So the motivation, I think, is incredibly important. Soft skills as well. So you just mentioned soft skills. We used to sort of think of them as a nice to have. We used to put the emphasis on great technical skills. They can do the job, or we can train them up really quickly. But now we're kind of seeing this flip, I think, aren't we? That soft skills are as important, if not more important. You've got to be able to communicate well.
And not just that, no one wants to work with brilliant jerks. We used to think IQ was the be-all and end-all that determined success. No, IQ is the minimum you get, I think, to be able to start a business or to get a job. But then Daniel Goleman popularized the concept of EQ back in the 80s. And that was all about not just identifying, managing, and regulating your own emotions, but that of others, especially if you're in a leadership position. Now, I think there's a third element that will really determine who succeeds over time, and that's AQ. That's your adaptability quotient. Like we've seen now, this pandemic, I hate the word because it's so overused, but I'm going to use it anyway. The people, the organizations, and the governments that have pivoted, realized they needed to adapt with the times. They're the ones that have the best out of this pandemic.
Right. And how would you measure AQ as a metric?
Openness to change, the degree that they embrace innovation, the foresight and the acceptance of discarding knowledge that doesn't serve you anymore. So letting go of old rituals and standards, Yeah, that's how I would define it.
Right. And so those things are present in any organization anyway, but perhaps I'm tapping them and finding a way to understand to what degree they're present and what you need to increase to improve adaptability is probably what you're getting at. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think now more than ever, companies need to innovate because what have I? So I found that businesses are either doing one or all of these things. Number one, they're expanding their service offering. They're providing things they've never done before. So an example would be local to Melbourne, Attica, right? Australia's number one restaurant, degustation only, used to pay $250 a head. They're now delivering lasagnas. They're changing their method of delivery. For example, I'm currently consulting to the University of Melbourne. They've shifted to a fully virtual campus. So programs, degrees that never used to be offered online, suddenly it's all online. And number three, they're reallocating their workforce. So yes, there's been a reallocation of human resources on a macro environmental level. And we're finding a lot of, for example, the pilots that have been let go from Virgin or Qantas, a lot of them have had to reallocate their skills and resources somehow. Some of them are stocking shelves in supermarkets. Some of them are manning call centers. So yeah, definitely.
Wow. That's actually a lot to mentally unpack, I think, for some businesses, isn't it? Is, you know, what does this look like? And I think for all of us, the uncertainty of time is the killer. Now, how long are we going to have
I know,
to?
right? Like, when is it going to end?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Who knows? And if you're in Victoria like us, in Metro Victoria, where we've got another 6 weeks of lockdown, having just come out of a couple of months, coming back to our point about mental fragility, that can sort of exacerbate things. So just going back to soft skills for a second. We did a session with Toby Nebo, a recruiter who hired completely distributed teams a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that their interviewing is all asynchronous. So in other words, it doesn't happen at the same time, and it's all done on Slack. So there's conversations on Slack, which we found really fascinating. But he said the things that they look for then are people who can give short, sharp answers to questions, not people who write a novel. Go off and research the answer to the question and write a novel. Because if you're in a dialogue with someone on the other side of the world and you're working on a mission critical thing on a system, you want to be able to communicate like this. So can you articulate what you mean succinctly and clearly for the other person, not give them this is the correct textbook answer. Just dilute, and give them the info that they need. It's this thing as well, isn't it? That simplicity is actually really powerful, but complexity just sort of shows weakness in your processes and the way you communicate.
Exactly. Too many people hide behind, complicated words or text speak, or think that the more words they shove into a sentence, the more intelligent they sound. But actually, opposite is true.
Yes. That was me doing a very short sentence.
Sharp.
By the way, I didn't. So let's just dig into the portions that where business is having to change, people having to change on the individual level, but then at an organizational level, there's going to be these changes to the way we work in the future. At an organizational level, what are sort of the main changes that you're going to see, that you think we're going to see there?
I think there's a large-scale rethink of not just the nature of work, so really challenging where and how it's done, and retraining and skills necessary to compete, to survive today and to compete in the future. And so a lot of teams were already capable and were already doing remote work, but now after the experience of forced remote work, I think that will shift to more distributed ways of working, where we can decide which teams generate the most impact and benefit from fully online, or is staggered, is it rostered? So it's a complete rethink. And I also think it's really hard, like you said earlier about someone that lives alone, suddenly their only social outlet is gone. So how do we maintain engagement, and how do we continuously build our culture when we're not together?
Yeah.
So how do you remain connected and in sync when we're apart?
And so then those sort of two key things there probably refocus where HR teams need to be thinking now is, the learning, the development. How do we develop the people we've got? How do we recognize what they're good at and where their skills are, and how we could pivot those skills to benefit another area completely? And how do we make sure that we're maintaining that feeling of connectedness for all of our people? They're perhaps things that they traditionally haven't had to think about to the depth that we're looking at. It's normally, maintaining process, performance, making sure staffing levels are where they are, compliance, and a big degree of compliance. But now shifting towards, ironically, the much more human side of human resources. I've always hated the phrase human resources. I don't know any human that likes to be thought of as a resource. I much prefer people. But it's
I think another point to raise, it's not just the managing people and the onboarding, but it's the getting the people in the first place, the recruiting. So if physical proximity to an office is no longer relevant, then really the sky's the limit. Like, you can tap into people no matter where they are in the world. So I think companies will have to get more creative in how and where they access talent.
Yeah, absolutely, and that ties nicely into a session like this we did a week or two ago with Phil van der Heever from Frank Law, when we were talking about that exact thing. And it sounds great in theory, and there's absolutely every reason why you should do it. But one of the things we were talking to him about was the difference in things like employment laws in different countries. Now, what are the things we need to be aware of? The Fair Work Act still counts, even if you have overseas workers in some cases. It's really fascinating. So I absolutely agree. And one of the things that we've been talking to clients about for a while is, geographically bound talent pools can be your inhibitor to growth, right? If there's only X amount of product managers to hire from, and you don't want to hire outside of that, you kind of need to be comfortable with what you're going to get is what you're going to get. So are you going to train them, or are you going to upskill them? Are you going to pay to do that? Are you prepared to do it, or are you prepared to go out elsewhere to find the people that you need? So they're all really interesting things.
That's a really good point, Razor. It's the increased mobility, and now a lot of people have embraced the gig economy. A lot of people's sense of stability has been shaken, so they're starting these side hustles, or they're going all in their side hustles, and that means what? More compliance, more monitoring. How do we do skill development? How do we learn?
One of the things that one of the conversations we've been having as well is we all kind of take it for granted. You and I are relatively outgoing, so doing this is pretty simple. For a lot of people, interviewing through video like this, if you're an introvert, is terrifying. Particularly if there's maybe three people on the other side, and you're an introvert, so you've got to sit in front of a screen of three people. Or what about your first all hands, and there's 350 people or whatever logged into a call, and everyone says, right, everybody welcome Friska, and everyone suddenly looking at you. So they're things that that we don't think about until they happen, which is just kind of fascinating. But the video interviewing, I think the general consensus, certainly with people that I talk to, is that video interviewing favors people who are more extrovert than introvert. So your hiring processes need to account for that. You need to be making solid hiring decisions. Don't let just one person make the hiring call. You have to have group on this, because you get different opinions. Have diversity in your hiring plans. A whole bunch of stuff. So from your perspective, what are for businesses that are going to be going through some kind of transformation, they know things can't stay the way that they are right now forever, what are if we had to boil it down to the three biggest things that they should be thinking about fixing first?
Fixing first.
Where their focus should be.
Well, if they know they have to change, then they need to manage it appropriately. Too many businesses cross out change management because they regard it as an expense, but it's really a value creation lever. If you think about the shift to remote work, if everybody has to do that, say you're a 500-person business and everyone's productivity drops by half because it's been managed poorly, the impact of that is enormous.
Mm.
You know, and if you manage it appropriately, you will be able to mitigate these mental health issues that we've just talked about. I mean, every year it costs Australian employers over $2 billion in lost productivity. So I think if you're going to make a significant change, then you need to resource it appropriately.
Yeah.
Number two is to don't underestimate the importance of having leaders that actually walk the talk, that actually advocate and sponsor and role model what you're trying to change. Because there's nothing more demotivating to a person on the ground that don't see their managers or leaders supporting it, but yet it's been a directive, so you're not going to get that. Yeah. And lastly, number three is to have some goddamn empathy. You know, swap your contempt for compassion. It's human response to resist change, and some people don't react very well to it. So just be patient and arm yourself with resistance management strategies, upskill yourself on how to have courageous conversations. Yeah, so those are my top three.
Brilliant. It's really easy to underestimate the impact this is having on everyone. Even if you can't see it, you don't hear it. Everyone's going through this in their own way. So your point around just having compassion. I think everyone kind of deserves a hall pass at the moment. We're all going to do or say things that are potentially out of character. We're going to make decisions that we think are the right things to do in the moment. Turns out they're not. I think everyone kind of deserves a bit of a hall pass. The comment you made about leadership, though, is interesting to me. If your business is going to be going through some kind of transformation, do you spend time just working with your leadership group first before you start trying to roll stuff out?
100%. They need to support it. There's two things that either make a change stick or slip, and that is the leaders. So they can either erode or accelerate the changes of success. And number two is communication. It's either ineffective or lacking. So if you get those two levers right, you are 90% there.
Right. Brilliant. And if business wanted to find out more about that, they could find you and talk to you at?
They can send me an email at hello@freshbyfriska.com. That's also my website, or search for me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And we're going to put links to those in the comments below. Thank you so much. This has been brilliant. My head's a little bit like at the moment. Don't take it personally. It doesn't take much to make my head blow up. There's not much in there. But thank you. It's been brilliant. Anything else that you wanted to say before we go? I think we've covered a fair bit of ground.
Yeah, I just want people to understand that managing change, it's not just a business skill, it's a life skill. And it's a great time to invest in this right now. Because as we've seen, changes happen very, very fast. They're far-reaching. And they're very complex and overlapping. Like what was just one, health-related change turned into shifting the way we work, turned into long-term homeschooling, turned into increase in home delivery service. So a change in seemingly one area will often have a domino effect on others. So the sooner you can learn how to manage it, the better off you'll be.
Brilliant. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Speak to you soon.
Likewise. Thanks. See ya.
Cheers.